Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Beacon Hill Report, and his term in the hot seat, State Representative Chris Hendricks joining us.
Hello, Jim. How are you?
For this month. Thanks for coming in.
Glad to be back.
Good to see you. A busy time for you guys now as we've turned the calendar and a new year. The first quarter is has wrapped up, and now we're into certainly the budget season for you guys. But obviously, COVID's still dominating the news from Beacon Hill and really all over the place when it comes to towns and cities, and even at the federal level too. From the state standpoint right now, and I've asked the other reps this when they've come in too, just your thoughts on where the state stands right now as far as vaccinations, the vaccine, and just I guess COVID in general.
So taking the Johnson & Johnson vaccine issue aside for a moment, generally speaking, the state's doing pretty good. As we discussed before, a lot of the what's the word I'm looking for? Logistics of getting the vaccine into people's arms was a little tricky at first. And we had a lot of issues with appointment making, essentially online, because it's all done online, and with the 211 number. So those things seem to have worked themselves out a little bit. And now that I haven't had a good barometer of how I can tell people aren't getting vaccines is how many phone calls I get. Yep. For a while there, I was getting quite a bit about I can't get vaccine, and it's going to be a month or two until I get my appointment. I'm not getting any of those, so that's a good sign. And I know we have about 2 million fully vaccinated adults in Massachusetts, so that's again, how many people is it adults? So was it 4 more million to go?
Yeah, something like that.
So there's certainly a way to ways to go, but I have had very little concerns and calls coming into my office about availability. I know the CVS's in my district in the north end of New Bedford, they were using the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and they were always booked up. So they were always giving out. They were always working hard giving out the vaccines. Though that will be put on pause, obviously, because they were, I think, exclusively using Johnson & Johnson for a while. So there might be a little bit of a hiccup with the availability, but just so everyone knows, the Moderna and the Pfizer are completely safe. Right. And the Johnson & Johnson likely is too. And just for perspective here, just so the listeners are aware that there has been 7 million doses administered in the state. 6 out of those 6 cases, none in Massachusetts. And it's all, it appears to be related to birth control. So obviously we'll have to wait and see what the conclusion is on that. But it looks like even this Johnson & Johnson vaccine is still by and large safe.
The state I know I know the governor and legislature was saying that there just wasn't enough supply for the demand. Has that eased?
Yes.
In deference to obviously the Johnson & Johnson right now specifically, but has that eased?
Yes. So the doses are coming in. Last time I talked to Damone Chaplin, the health director at New Bedford, we were taking a tour, I think, of one of the vaccination sites, and he was very pleased with how the doses are coming in. We're still having a little bit of a problem getting doses into Acushnet, the smaller places, for those towns that have put together the infrastructure and apparatus to get mobile vaccinations going. They have it all set up, so we're trying to get make sure the little towns, the small areas have, the rural areas have availability. But by and large, it's the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine has been readily available.
And it's been based on population, as far as I know.
Yes.
Dispensing of the vaccine is pretty much. I guess there might be some different things, but for the most part, it's population.
It's all based on population. And I think that Michigan's having an issue.
Right.
For whatever reason, the numbers are going up, and I think they've asked for more. And I think they said, it's based on population. So, so fortunately, we haven't had any of those issues. But yeah, it's based on population. I'm really hoping as just Johnson & Johnson. My biggest concern is that it's going to create, it's going to. The Johnson & Johnson issue is going to create
hesitancy. Really.
Hesitancy.
Yeah.
People are going to be scared. So hopefully that doesn't snowball into something bigger.
Well, you had mentioned visiting one of the vaccination sites. So I mean, the city I know has opened one on the waterfront.
Yes.
They've got the McCoy Rec Center. It does seem as though there's more locations now in the district, your district, where people can get the shots, because I know
Yes.
the drugstores are getting it too. So that's obviously
Yes.
a good sign.
And that drugstore program was part of an overall push to get vaccines into the neighborhoods that are a little less disadvantaged, low income, lack of resources. So that was the idea. So that's why it's so unfortunate that the vaccine's getting halted up with this. For those types of places. But you're right. So we have the one on the waterfront which just opened. That should be open. What's the date today? Today's the 10th or 11th?
So yeah.
So I think it's opening up either yesterday or today.
Yeah.
Or 2 days ago. Because I know it was on the 10th it was supposed to open. So that's up and running. That is a huge facility if you haven't seen it. I took a tour of that a couple weeks ago. Before that, we took a tour of the McCoy Rec Center, which you mentioned, which is a smaller, but they're doing a great job.
And they've been doing that for a while,
They've
too.
been doing it for a while,
Yeah.
so they kind of have their legs going with that. So we're on our way. It's going to take a little more time, a little more patience, but I think by midsummer, mostly everyone especially at-risk folks, will be safe.
Rep. Cabral was talking last month when he came in about one of the big things is that there are those groups of people that are hesitant to take it, and he was saying that at the federal level, the state level, the local level, we are going to have to do a good job of informing people why it's important to take it and that they should take it. Has there been sort of an approach that you've seen from at the state level at least about trying to convince people that it's important to take the shots?
Yeah, as far as like a marketing standpoint,
yeah,
I haven't been part of any of those efforts, but I have been seeing a lot of local leaders, a lot of advocacy people who are at the locations. They're very knowledgeable about speaking to folks who are hesitant to get this. I think it's important that we understand that these vaccines weren't just created and then they're getting shipped out. The FDA has a process, and it's a very, very detailed. It's one of the best processes we have in the world as far as making sure that drugs are safe. So just remember that everything has been through the FDA. There are potentially some question marks, relative to the J&J issue, but I think we're in good shape.
Do you find, because your district is very, it's unique. There's no question about it. I mean, you've got a city, but you've got a rural community.
Yes.
Is the only word I can think of is attitude. Is the attitude in the rural community the same as in the city, or is it because people are spread out?
Yes, a bit.
They may not want to take it?
From what I can tell, which is, yes, that's true. The folks in the rural areas appear to be a little more hesitant. I know a lot of the first responders in Acushnet were eligible for the vaccine right off the bat. They could have just gone to New Bedford to get it. From what I'm hearing, there was a large fraction of those folks didn't get it at the time. I was having that conversation, which was a month or so ago. So hopefully that's changed. But there has been quite a bit of hesitancy in those areas versus the larger parts of New Bedford.
Which is interesting because they're right next to each other.
Right, geographically very, very close.
And you've got that sort of mindset that's in one versus the other.
That's one thing I learned is doing this job is that you think a district is homogenous, and you realize that just being close in neighborhoods and in towns doesn't really necessarily mean you're going to feel the same way about an issue.
And we're so mobile that people in Acushnet are going to New Bedford and vice versa.
Right.
So interesting too. You were talking about, off camera here, about obviously the federal government with the American Rescue Plan has taken steps to help communities. You're on the committee that's looking at the funding. It's such an important issue for communities. What can you tell us a little bit about the update? Because certainly cities and towns, and Acushnet has been affected financially just as much as New Bedford has, but just percentage-wise different.
Yeah. So it looks like overall the state is about to get $7.5 to $8 billion total. That includes direct payments for unemployment, money to the towns, money to the state. The big question mark is, now this stimulus plan related as it relates to the two other stimulus plans, this has more local level support. So there's going to be a lot more freedom, hopefully, with the cities and towns to be able to do what they need to do. Like I know this bill has a provision that if they want to just use the certain X amount of dollars to give their essential workers hazard pay, you can give all of them $25,000 if you wanted to, or you could give them $12,000 over the course of two payments. So I'm hoping that once the guidelines come out in May, I think it's May 10th, and May 10th that's going to come out. We should have a little more, a better idea on how, the city of New Bedford and Acushnet is going to be able to use that money. Because one, it's going to be a lot of money. I think New Bedford's going to get anywhere from $60 to $70 million total. Acushnet's looking to get $1 million. It would be good if they could, use a large fraction of that to replenish some of their coffers, whether it be, the school funding or what have you. So I'm anxious to see, how we can use that money.
Mindset-wise, though, is it not a concern, but is it something to think about at the state level, at the low? If you're just doing budgets, this is a one-shot deal, so you don't want to start something that you're going to have to continue down the road.
Right.
Financially.
And that point was made in the education discussion we were having yesterday. The education funding right now, they're using the enrollment numbers from 2020 when they should be using from 2019. It's a more accurate reflection of what the student body is. And so someone mentioned that there's a lot of federal money coming in, so hopefully the towns that have some shortfalls there can use the federal money towards that, which may or may not be true. We don't know yet. So you're exactly right. To rely on that, it's a one-time shot deal. It's not going to be something that's going to be a steady stream of funding. So we have to be smart in how we use it.
And the state seems to be doing, stimulus aside here, the state seems to be doing okay relative to everything going on with as far as monies go right now and collection of taxes and fees and what have you.
The tax assessment has been a lot better than expected. I know they were expecting a shortfall of billions of dollars, and it looks like we will have a shortfall, but it won't be anything close to what we expected. And that's because of the two. I'm convinced it was just the two stimuluses. When you have people on unemployment, they have buying power. Once you take buying power away from people, then that creates real problems. I don't think we ran into that much, which was thankfully. But by and large, the state is doing pretty well, especially even with school funding. The governor agreed to fund the school. The school year of 2022, according to the SOA, the Student Opportunity Act statute. So the 1/6 of that budget needs to be.
But you had passed a couple of years ago,
right?
And really haven't had a chance to implement it.
Yes, right, exactly. So that's good that the governor has put that money in for the SOA. We're having an issue again with the enrollment. Even with the House plan that we're going to put $40 million aside for those cities and towns that had that shortfall relative to the employment number, which is going to be almost all of them. Even that $40 million is short. We need another probably about 90 million to make everyone whole relative to just the employment numbers alone, never mind the COVID-related stuff.
I imagine you and your colleagues have, it's a difficult task right now. And I guess, you look at the budget, it's the biggest thing, but there's supplemental budgets, there's other things that go on. Because of how COVID has played out and how, the economy is different and just people working are different now. Boston's a ghost town in many cases, many ways. That, when you're looking at funding issues, nonprofits and what have you, everything's flipped.
Yeah.
And it's got to be, as you're going into this budget and supplemental budget and what have you, what do you do? Because is that an outlay or is that going to be the new normal?
Yeah, you're right. A lot of the people that have taken the biggest hit are the advocacy groups that rely on state money, rely on kind of altruistic spending, if you will. So that's going to be a difficult piece moving forward.
I mean, we've had Pam in from PACE, and we've had the United Way in, and I mean the demand for those organizations is huge.
Yeah, and to the state's credit, things like you said, PACE, that has to do with RAF money for housing. We put another additional $150 million, I think it was, last year. So I'm glad the state is acknowledging those issues that you just brought up. That there's been a lot of food access issues that have cropped up. COVID has essentially exacerbated all those types of issues. Yeah. To the state's credit, to the speaker's credit, they've seemed to focus on food security, getting vaccinations and resources into low-income areas, which is huge, especially with a thing like a pandemic, because you want everybody to be safe, because if you have a whole section of the population that's not receiving those resources, that can affect everyone else. So I'm glad that they're prioritizing that.
You mentioned earlier about the unemployment insurance. I mean, the bill, the unemployment insurance bill, which you were talking about last time you were in here, has passed.
Yes.
How key is that right now at this time?
It's huge. It's huge. One of the main concerns that I was getting from my constituents, especially from Acushnet, with the small business owners who will have to pay taxes on those PPP loans that they got from the federal government that were forgiven. So what this bill did is that you're not going to owe state taxes at all on any money that you received from the PPP loans, which is great. It's just huge. Another thing that bill did was employers across Massachusetts were expected, planned to get a 60% increase in their tax bill for employers for the unemployment trust fund. That we prevented, so it's going to stay the same. And again, there's a lot of talk about helping people with unemployment, but I think you got to focus on the businesses too, and I think that was a huge piece that's going to help. Those two pieces that are going to help businesses.
It's interesting too is you come from the side where you have another job.
Yeah.
So you see how that impacts business because you work.
Right.
And I know that that's just.
Yeah, it can snowball. And when you have places that can't hire, you don't have people that can't work. And you don't have people that can't work. You don't have people that get injured.
It seemed a lot of a lot of support, though. I mean, that bill.
I think if I remember correctly, I think it passed unanimously. It was a bipartisan, which is it doesn't get a lot of things like that in Massachusetts don't get a lot of attention. But when I think it should. That's that type of bipartisanship really can be effective.
And obviously, it had the support of the governor.
Yes. Yep. And I think this has been a tough time, and I think he's done his best, and I think he's done a great job. And I will say this on the governor, that every time we had an issue where something was lacking, we brought it to his attention, and it was either got fixed or was in the works to get fixed. Well, whether it was no testing down here, because for a while we didn't have much testing. We didn't have a vaccination site. We had to go to Dartmouth for a long time. So slowly but surely the resources started coming.
With the unemployment insurance bill now, is it easier for the businesses to go through the process as well to get the help at the state level too?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, I'm just looking, I guess, when they have questions and issues dealing with that.
Yes.
Are they able to?
Yes. And in fact, the unemployment department, I think I may have said this last time, has been unbelievable. Whenever I have a constituent issue or someone who has a small business and is worried about a 6% hike in their taxes, unemployment has been unbelievable at getting either information to the constituent or information to us about certain issues, and I can't be more pleased with how they're doing. Because there was a little bit of a time there where they got backlogged.
Well, that's what I said.
And everyone had their was up in arms.
Yeah.
But they fixed it, they're not having those issues.
The other stimulus, I know that they were worried that they couldn't talk to people.
Right.
and that was frustrating them. So
Yes.
I'm just wondering if that's sort of eased up now.
Yeah, I as far as I know, there haven't been any major issues on that end.
One thing that is not COVID related, but I know that you and I were talking about it, and I know the mayor would be thrilled to talk about it, is that wind power through all this is going forward. I mean,
Yeah,
the federal
it's amazing.
government is backing it, and Vineyard Wind, we're going.
Yeah. Just look a handful. Excuse me, a handful of months ago. Vineyard Wind's permit was jammed up. You had a speaker, Bob DeLue did a great job, but I can't recall him giving any major speeches on South Coast being the hub of wind energy. And you fast forward to now, you have the Speaker Mariano, who unsolicited, kind of made a comment about the South Coast being the hub. I mean, we've heard everyone in Boston talk about wind energy and Massachusetts being a leader, but rarely do you hear someone in that position speak specifically about the South Coast. I thought that was huge. I'm surprised I didn't get more attention through the Standard Times down here. And then several days after that, the governor said the same thing. And if you ask the mayor, he'll tell you that he's been having a tough time getting the governor to come on board and drink the Kool-Aid on this stuff, and it looks like he's coming around to really seeing an opportunity here in the South Coast. In New Bedford, we're fully willing and ready and able to get this going.
So where do we stand right now? What can, and I know most people, seeing is believing. What do you think, or just timeline, when do you think that people will actually see tangible things?
I think that they're saying by the end of 22, 23, that time, you're going to start seeing a lot more activity on the waterfront, hopefully. That also depends on when you're moving forward and making sure they have all the proper their T's crossed and I's dotted. And then you have other companies who are going to possibly coming in with part of that climate bill that we just passed was an additional 56. I think an additional 2,400 megawatts, bringing the total to 5,600 megawatts that we have contracted out. So there's going to be a lot more, just because of that alone, there's going to be a lot more activity and a lot more news on that. So I think over the next year plus, you'll probably physically be seeing stuff on the waterfront in this industry getting going. And you might even sooner, you might see things happening with places like BCC. You have President Douglas at BCC who's doing an amazing job at getting people, trying to get a system put in place to get people trained, get people knowledgeable about this new industry.
It seems as though a big benefit, an unknown benefit too, is the ancillary businesses that will be coming or will be at least doing business in New Bedford too.
Yes, that's a multi-million-dollar industry. That alone, restaurants, contractors, retailers. I worked at. I bartended at Cork in New Bedford. I know full well how the seasons change and how dependent businesses can be on the fishing industry and in waterfront activity in general. So hopefully it has that butterfly effect where it should help retailers, wholesalers, all sorts of other businesses once that comes down the line. In the trades, it's going to help the trades. I think what another opportunity we have here is we can reinforce the fact that learning a trade, working with your hands is good. Having a transferable skill is good. And I think once you have wind come, it's going to bring a lot of energy for the trades. And then once the trades come, we'll have a better economy down here.
Are you okay and I guess satisfied with the way that the fishing industry and the wind, the potential wind industry is going to work together and how things have been?
So far, obviously the fishing community has a lot of issues, as they should, and as we should. It's a multi-million-dollar industry here for our city. So we have to make sure that we don't cut them loose. So a lot of the public discussions I've been to and have attended, they've always shown up, the fishing community, and expressed their concerns, which I hope they continue to do. And it appears that Vineyard Wind and the folks who are going to come in and put this industry on the tracks are really cognizant of those issues, and they know fishing in New Bedford go hand in hand. So they're going to have to be aware of that, and they're going to have to make certain accommodations if need be. I know once the windmills are in, the windmills themselves will be the only physical barrier, if at all. the cable that is going to be generating electricity will be all underground, underwater. So. And they're going to be, I think they're moving around some of the windmills to accommodate some of the spatial issues that was raised by some of the fishermen too.
As the mayor says, the fishing industry drives the engine here.
Oh yeah,
drives the vehicle.
Yeah, the whole downtown waterfront.
We've got a couple minutes left, but I wanted to touch base. We haven't talked with you since the new speaker, and obviously committee assignments for you.
Yes,
things have
very
changed.
pleased.
Why don't you just give people a little bit of
by and large, it's the same. I'm still on the Judiciary Committee, which I'm very proud of. It's a very busy committee, as you know. A lot of bills go through there, so it's a great learning experience. It's a great way to get involved. I was on the Redistricting Committee.
Right.
That has changed into the Federal Stimulus and Census Oversight Committee, which we just discussed a few minutes ago. And that has to do with any federal money coming in relative to COVID or any census issues. We'll be going through this committee and getting briefed through this committee. For that committee, we already had one briefing from the White House, actually, which wasn't given to all the states. It was just given to us, fortunately. So that was kind of special. And so, to give us a little bit of a footing on that committee, what it's going to look like, what the money's going to look like, what the issues with the money's going to look like. So I'm excited to work on that. I'm also on the Housing Committee, which I mentioned before, as housing is going to be a big issue, I think, especially with things like the moratorium and access to fair housing and the way the economy is right now. I think housing issues might be huge moving forward. So I'm on that committee, and that's it.
The redistricting, I was going to ask you too. I mean, the census I know was completed last fall. Any timetable as to when things happen?
I don't know. That's funny because the redistricting committee transformed into this committee, but there is another census.
Because you still have to redistrict theoretically.
Yes. And I think there's another new committee that's just going to be responsible for that. So I don't know a timeline on the census.
But I would imagine with redistricting too, you can't have a whole lot of changes because it's still based on population, really.
At the end of the day, you still have to divide it up evenly.
Right.
And I'm not too knowledgeable about these redistricting. I'm certainly curious about it because it's a huge issue, and I think this year and moving forward, it's going to get a lot more attention over the next several months. I think, which is good because it's used as a political tool. A lot of the times, not so much here in Massachusetts, or it can, not so much as like a lot of the southern states, but
you look at the population, at least down here, and it doesn't seem to have changed. I mean, the small towns are growing.
Right. If anything, the small towns are growing in the bigger cities. And New Bedford population, I think it's expected to stay roughly the same.
Yeah. If not expand, hopefully a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. I mean,
right.
You can't. I wouldn't expect too much of a. I guess a change.
Right, anything that's a status quo, anything less you have to change, I think would be the better for democracy, generally.
But I would assume Boston, although pre-COVID versus post-COVID.
And a lot of people fled cities, too.
Correct.
Bigger cities like Boston and New York, so how is that going to change things? So you're right. I mean, there's a lot of, might be some tricky issues there with the redistricting. Fortunately, I don't think I'll have to be dealing with much of that. Thankfully.
Yeah. No, like I said, I would be surprised if there'd be a huge redistricting for the local delegation. Because things seem to have grown in the smaller towns, and New Bedford should grow a little bit, I would think. I mean, the mayor made a huge push to make sure that everybody was counted.
Right. And I think all the people involved with that effort, Lynn Kosh especially, and Helena De Silva Hughes, they did a great job at getting that information out. So hopefully we'll get over 100,000.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
It's good seeing you.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Beacon Hill Report. I'm Jim Marshall. We will talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.